Welcome back, everybody. My name is Tim and this is another Real Ideal Gear review. Today we're looking at the Citizen ProMaster Dive Watch. This is an automatic dive watch, sometimes referred to as the Seiko SKX killer because it's the last one standing, but technically Seiko just discontinued making the SKX. I'm not so sure that Citizen put them out of business, or at least put that model out of business. As a matter of fact, the popularity of the SKX probably still outrivals the popularity of this Citizen ProMaster Diver. So we'll take a look at this watch. There's a lot of great features about this watch. There's a couple of things that are really not good at all. As far as function goes, the function's great, but there's some design features in here that are real head scratchers. Of course, you know I'm a nut when it comes to Lume. This is a full Lume dial watch. Full Lume. It does a great job on the Lume side. So let's take a look at the 5 things we typically look at, which are size, fitment, finish, accuracy, and then legibility and Lume. So this is your typical dive watch dimensions. It's 42 millimeters across, 13 high, 20 mil between the lugs. A lot of great options out there for strap changes. And as far as wearability on this watch, the size is a great size for a dive watch. It's that typical dive watch height, so you got to be careful on how tall and what you wear when it comes down to, you know, civilian clothes, shirts with a cuff on it. You know, be careful with how tight the cuff is, and if it's too tight, this watch may not fit underneath it because it is a dive watch. So keep that in mind when it comes down to just the overall dimensions, working with what you're going to do situationally. But overall, it's actually a little bit lighter than most dive watches because of the rubber strap that's on here. So the weight is down, but otherwise it's pretty typical top to bottom when it comes down to size. Let's take a look at fitment. Fitment on this watch is really good. When it comes down to taking this watch, adjusting it during the day, easy to do. One of the downsides to this watch is the stiffness of this rubber strap. It's a heavy duty strap, okay? So it's gonna take a lot of abuse. This is definitely a workhorse of a watch, but it's not real flexible. It's actually pretty stiff, all right? Too stiff in my book. When it comes down to it and you're putting this watch together on the pin buckle and you're gonna fold this over into the keepers, okay, it is pretty stiff in there. Second thing I want to point out on the strap as far as fitment goes, this second keeper slides around way too easily. And it tends to want to move back towards the other keeper, towards the pin buckle. Why? Because the strap is so stiff. If the strap was a little bit more supple, a little bit more flexible, that second keeper would stay further out. You would keep this tag end from sticking up as high as it does. Okay, but because it's so stiff, it's naturally pulling this keeper back towards the pin buckle. So that's a feature about this watch that I don't think is really very good. They got to look at this strap and try and find a way to make it a little bit more flexible. Overall fitment, though, is great. It fits well on the wrist. Typical dimensions on the head of the watch as far as width, height off the wrist, that kind of thing. So I think the size and fitment work really well together. Finish. Oh, this is a well-finished watch. You have polishing on the side of the case. You have brush finishing on the top of the case, and also a brush finish around the edges of the bezel, which means that this watch has got a little class to it, a little bit of flash to it. You can wear this watch in more than just the work environment. It's one that I've been looking forward to. I've had it in a cart on eBay for a long time, and finally was able to pick this one up. And we're going to take this out mowing, and we're going to see how this works with my job and just kind of everyday wear, because for me, everyday wear means every day, all day. But overall finishing, I really like it. The finishing of the dial, full Lume dial, all right? So it's got that mint yellow off-white color to it, which I have no problem with. I actually like that color because I know what the outcome is. You know, later on in the low light situations, it just lights up like a torch. So that's great. The handset, I love the design of the handset. I love the differentiation of the 12 o'clock versus the 6 o'clock and 9 o'clock markers. And then the other markers that surround that are all blacked out. To me, I think they should have been all consistent when it comes down to the design of the hand or the hour markers, and even consistency with the hands and the hour markers. I think when you have a full Lume dial, you really need to go blackout, or you got to do a little bit more outlining on the hands, a little bit more black outlining on the hour markers that are not blacked out, because they're just not quite distinguishable. And that's more of a contrast issue, more of a legibility issue we'll talk a little bit more about later on. But the overall finishing of this, I love it. The finishing of the bezel I think is good. It's a 60-click bezel. It is kind of a subdued silver printed or silver numbered dial. You've got the basic black background and a silver numbers and minute markers on here. But it's a 60-click bezel. You know, it's not the best bezel out there. The finishing on it, it's sloppy, mushy, whatever you want to call it. There's a little bit of back play. However, it does line up. So as far as bezels go, at this price range, you get a bezel that lines up with the 12 o'clock and it lines up with the minute markers as it goes around, at least on this watch. So overall finishing on this is great. Oh, one more thing is the left-hand crown. I love the left-hand crown. It's just something a little different, and it gets it off of the back of the wrist side of the watch. So whenever you have a larger watch that has you know, the crown's at the 3 o'clock position on my hand for the left hand, when you put your hand back, you tend to poke the back of your hand with those crowns or pushers or whatever they are. So with this on the left hand side, that's not an issue for people who wear this watch on their left wrist. All right, moving on to accuracy. This falls within spec on accuracy. No issues there. I do go through periodically and check watches that I have months down the line just to make sure that the accuracy is still good, and I'll report on those. I do have one that I had to regulate, an AliExpress model that was kind of on the edge, and then a month later, yeah, it's out of spec. So I do check the watches. So for right now, well within spec. It's a Citizen movement, reliable movement, Miyota movement. Citizen, Miyota, same thing. So well within spec. Now, legibility and Lume. Legibility, again, blackout. Should be blacked out hands, should be blacked out markers, or add some more black outlining to the hands or to the 12, 6, and 9, just to make those stand out a little bit more during the daylight hours. Legibility wise though, as far as the markers go, the distinction between the 12-hour versus the other hour markers on here, very, very good. Legibility of the bezel is really good. It does have a loomed pip. It has the full lume dial, so the coordination and the indexing of those pieces working together is easy to do. Overall legibility I like. Here's the biggest ding of all. Take a look at the date, the day date. The day date is black, okay? And it has this black background with white lettering and numbers. But the white is just not bright enough, or it's just not distinct enough. And I understand the design element of this, that you want to have the black day date because you have the black markers that go around. It matches. But for some reason, you know, they just didn't put a high enough contrast day date wheel in here, and it just really suffers. I can't read, even with glasses, I have a harder time reading this. I have to really slow everything down, spend a little time looking at the day date, which you shouldn't have to do as much as I have to do when it comes down to, you know, wearing glasses. I can see totally fine, but then I have to have the right light in order to get that day date to show up. So to me, that's a huge ding. I mean, that's bigger than the blackout hands, I think, or the legibility of the hands. The legibility of the day date window is terrible. Overall, though, the legibility I think is great. It all works together, and easy to read watch, full lume dial. When it lights up, there's no issue as to what time it is at all. And that's what I love about full lume dials, especially during the night, early morning hours. This one lasts all night. So the lume side of this is a nightlight. It works great. The handset lasts a little longer than the dial does, which is fine. You do have a loomed pip so that if you want to reference something, you can reference your bezel when you're timing something, even in low light conditions. So the lume on this watch is really, really good. Is it the best lume out there? Not the best lume out there, but it's definitely on the upper end. And when it comes down to that 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning check of the time, you're going to be able to read it. I usually put my glasses on. I can read it fine, but it's not the brightest one out there. There's a few others that are out there that are brighter than this. So what are the things that I like about this watch? I do like the design. I like the classic nature of it. I like the left-hand crown. I like the polish on the sides, the brushing on the top case and on the bezel. The bezel lines up. That's a great plus. I love the texture on the bezel. I love the handset. I love the adjustability of the strap. The downsides to this watch, though, number one on the top of the list is the day date window is useless. The hands and the 12, 6, and 9 should have a heavier black outline to it. the strap is just too stiff. And so for those reasons, this is a 9 out of 10. I do recommend this watch. It's a classic. You know, if you can't find the SKX and it's just overpriced, which they almost all are. I haven't seen one yet that's actually reasonably priced for what you're getting. I went after the Citizen, and I think the Citizen does and offers a great product for the value, for the money. So to me, this is a great option still. It's still within that $200 and whatever $20 range when it comes down to a new watch. So check that out. I think it's a great value. And so if you have any comments or questions about this watch, put them down below. If you have other ideas around watches of this style, this price range, ISO certified for scuba diving, which I think is a huge deal still. Screw down crown, that helps as well. I didn't mention that. 200 meters of water resistance. 200 meters of water resistance. Man, there's a few things I forgot. But I just, you know, ISO certification requires that. So anyway, put those things down in the comments below. We'll talk about those things and add more information out there for anybody who watches the video. So my name is Tim. This has been a Real Ideal Gear Review. We'll catch you guys next time.